Okay, welcome to today class. We are going to be learning about estimating decimal products. I want you to go to the next page in your lessons tab, which would be page 27. Okay, go ahead and label that page number for me. Okay, and give this a title of Estimating Decimal Products. Okay, estimating means to get a close guess. Products is multiplication. So today we're going to be talking about multiplying decimals, but we want to get a close guess. It's where we want to be able to do stuff easier in our heads. Now when we are dealing with decimals, you need to be able to round to specific place values. So we're going to focus on that first. So skip one line. I want you to write rounding decimals. That's what we're going to talk about here. Okay, just like rounding whole numbers, depending on what place value you are looking at, it still will follow the same rules. So, if you'll remember, if you have to look at the digit before it and 5 or higher, you round up. And if your number is 4 or lower, you round down, which means actually keeping the digit the same, but rounding down to a lower number than the number you currently have. So we're going to practice rounding to the nearest tenth, but I want you to realize it works for hundredth, thousandth, 10, 100. It just depends on the specific place value you're asked to round to. So we are going to focus only on rounding to the tenths place, but if you're asked to round to the hundredths or the thousandths, you will need to look at that carefully. So for these examples, we are just rounding to the tenths place. So round to the nearest tenth. So we're going to write 3 numbers and then we're going to go through and round them to the nearest tenth. Okay, first one I want you to write is 0.843. Okay, the next one I want you to write is 19.98. The last one I want you to do is 3.751. Okay, we want to round to the nearest tenth. So it's important to note where their tenths place is. Remember from our previous lesson on place value, the tenths place is the first one after the decimal point. So this is the place value we want to round each of these numbers to. Now we need to determine what place or what 2 tenths this number is between. So 0.8 would be the smaller tenth. The next one after that, what comes after 8? 9, so 0.9. So 0.843 lies between these 2 tenths. Now we just need to determine which one it's actually closer to. This is where the digit after it becomes important. Now we just decide which one is it closer to, 0.8 or 0.9. 4 or lower, we actually round to the smaller tenth. So this would round to 0.8. Okay, look at the next example. The smaller tenth would be what you see here, 19.9. Now notice I end there because I'm only interested in the tenths and higher. This right here is actually a 0 if I wanted to write it, but since I'm interested in the tenths place, I don't need to write the zeros after a decimal. Now the next one up, what's higher than 9 would be 10, but it wouldn't be 19.10. I can't have 10 tenths in this place value, so I actually need to go up a whole unit because this would turn into 10, which would make this, well, 10 again, which would actually make this 20.0. Now why do I write the 0 on this one? since I need it to the nearest tenth, I actually need to have something in that tenths place, and 0 is what I have. Now, which one is it closer to? Look at the digit right before it. Because that's an 8, we actually need to round to the higher tenth. So 20.0 is closest. Okay, last one we're going to look at. 3.751 to the nearest tenth. So the lower tenth would be 3.7. The higher tenth, what's bigger than 7? 8. So 3.8. Now we just need to determine which one is this closer to. So we look at the digit before it. 5. So 5 or higher. We need to round up. So because of that, we are going to choose 3.8. Okay, remember this is rounding to the nearest tenth. If I was rounding to the nearest hundredth, I'd look at the hundredths place. If I was rounding to the nearest 1, I would look at the ones place. It depends on what you are asked to round to. Okay, now we need to be able to round in order to estimate. So skip one line and I want you now to write estimating decimal products. Now we've practiced rounding, you're ready to estimate decimal products. Okay, remember, products means multiplication. So we're going to be multiplying decimal numbers, but the whole purpose of estimating is to be able to do the math in our head. We don't want to round these numbers just for us to have to pull out a calculator or take 5 minutes to figure it out. We want something easy for ourselves to work with. Okay, we're going to do 2 different examples that I want you to practice with estimating. Okay, the first one I want you to do is 0.641 times 0.035. Now these look like really messy decimals. For estimating's sake though, what's important is you want to round to the largest place value that is not a 0. So, on this number, what's the largest place value that is not a 0? It would be the tenths place. So I actually want to round this one to the tenths place. This one, I want to round to the hundredths place because these zeros are not significant digits. Okay, something you need, so let's go ahead and round these. So to the nearest tenth, this is either going to be 0.6 or the one higher, 0.7. So we look at the 4, because that's 4 or lower, we're going to round down. So this would round to 0.6. This one here, 3.5, so it's either 0.03 or 0.04. Because of the 5 or higher, we round up. So this would be closer to 0.04. Now, there's something important you need to remember about multiplying decimals. You learned it in 5th grade, but many times we forget it. I want you to skip 2 lines, and I want you to write this note. When multiplying decimal numbers, when multiplying decimal numbers, ignore the decimals at first. Not ignore them the whole time, just at first. Ignore the decimals at first. So if I'm ignoring these decimals, I see 6 and I see 4. What is 6 times 4? 24. So I want you to write 24. But this number is a number smaller than 1, and this one's way smaller than 1, so there's no way I can get an answer of 24. So that's why you ignore them at first. After multiplying, okay, so we multiply those numbers, count the decimal place values in the factors. The factors are the numbers that you multiply together. So we had in the one that we're working with, not the very original one, we're looking at our estimate. So we have 1, 2, 3 places behind the decimal total. Your answer will have the total decimal places. So, looking back here, 24, I have 1, 2, 3 places behind the decimal. That means I need to put 1, 2, 3 places behind the decimal. My final answer is 0.024. There's my 24 and 1, 2, 3 places behind the decimal. Okay, let's do one more example over here. Let's do 21.93 times 5.76. Okay, remember I said look at your highest place value that is not a 0. So highest place value not a 0 here is the tens. So to estimate here, let's round it to the nearest 10. So it's either going to be 20 or the next one up, 30. Well, the 1 tells me I'm going to round it. It's closer to 20 than it is to 30. 5.76, the first place value that is not a 0 would be the 1's place. So it's going to either be 5 or 6. I look at the 7 because that's larger than 5. I'm going to round up to 6, so this is closer to 6. Okay, now since I don't have any decimals in my estimate product, I'm just going to multiply 20 times 6, and that gives me 120. My answer will be close to 120. Now, I want you to get familiar with something. This right here means approximately or close. Now, this does not equal this, but this is close to it. So my estimate answer is about 120. Same thing over here. This is about what we had here. And my answer is going to be about 0.024 in this example. Okay, one real life example. I'm going to tell a story problem, but we're just going to write a couple of words to go with it. I use estimating all the time when I go to the grocery store. I pick up some apples and I put them in a bag, and they're not going to be a nice even 2 pounds usually. It's going to be a close answer or a close measurement. So when I weigh the apples, so here's the example we're going to do. We're going to have apples, and you get 2.76 pounds of apples. Now, apples cost $1.64 a pound. So if you want to figure out how much you are spending about and see if you have enough money, you're going to do an estimate. Okay, look at the first place value. So the 1's is not a 0, so 2. Now, I'm either going to round this to 2 or to 3. How do I determine that? Look at the digit to the right. 7 is higher, so I'm going to round this to about 3 pounds. Now, cost, I want to look at this, and this 1's place, once again, is my highest place value. That's not a 0. So it's either going to be closer to $1 or $2. So I look at the digit before it. 6 is 5 or higher, so I'm going to round up. So it's close to $2 a pound. Now, if I'm buying 3 pounds at $2 per pound, that's where my estimate comes in of 3 times $2. So I can expect to spend about $6. Now, is this an overestimate or an underestimate? Since I rounded this up, and I also rounded this up, this is an overestimate. $6 is going to be close to how much I'm going to spend, but it's actually going to be more than the actual price. So this is just where you would use estimating decimals. Okay, once you finish that, make sure it's in your nicest handwriting, and we'll see you tomorrow.